Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today, just for a change, the outcome of the battle is not going to be determined by which team makes the most mistakes and tries to throw the hardest. I know, highly unusual. The hero of today's battle is Dr. Rabbit Muchas Gracias here, sporting a very fetching New Year camo on his Tier 8 Russian battleship, the Lenin, or as I like to call it, the Nelsky, because, you know, it's got the same gun configuration as the Nelson, and it's Russian. Well, it doesn't have exactly the same gun configuration as the Nelson, or other battleships that sport 3 turrets up front, because the third turret actually has a full 360 degrees of clearance, which means it has a superior gun configuration to ships like the Nelson or the Japanese Tier 9 Izumo. Also, unlike the Nelson, which is Tier 7, the Lenin is Tier 8, which means it doesn't have the Nelson's terrible 27mm of bow armour plating that can be overmatched by 16-inch armour-piercing shells. It has 32mm of bow armour plating, in common with other Tier 8, 9 and 10 battleships, which means its bows can only be overmatched by 18-inch or higher caliber guns firing armour-piercing shells from ships like the Musashi, the Yamato or higher. In addition to that, however, it also has a 100mm thick icebreaker extending all the way up to the bows, which means that it has a decent chance of bouncing even 18-inch or higher shells. The Lenin is also further unlike the Nelson in that it is not really slow. I mean, it's not really fast either. Without a speed flag, which Dr. Rabbit doesn't appear to have equipped, it has a top speed of exactly 28.5 knots, which is precisely the speed that he's currently doing. So the Nelsky is not incredibly fast. I mean, we're not talking a Georgia here, we're not even talking an Iowa, but it's also not incredibly slow either. So I suppose in many respects it's really nothing like the Nelson at all, other than the fact that it has 3 gun turrets up front. Bad news, the AA is kind of bad. Although it does get a fighter plane consumable. Enemy destroyer spotted, who's immediately started smoking up. Also an enemy Tirpitz. The Farragut and the Tirpitz, remember those two guys, we're going to be seeing more of them towards the end of the battle. But the Nelson's bad AA doesn't really matter, because even great AA isn't going to stop you from getting struck by a carrier, and also there is no carrier in this battle. Nobody's been set on fire. Now, he's not burning his damage control to take care of it. This is one of the strengths and yet also one of the weaknesses of Russian battleships. They have extremely short cooldowns on their damage control, like 20 seconds between uses. But they have a limited number of uses, so it's very easy to basically run out of damage control if you use it when you don't really need it. Now he is still spotted, although he's managed to get into cover from the Tirpitz and the Farragut, and yep, it's the Swedish Skåne and the Dutch Seven Provinces over there who've got him spotted. He starts swinging the turrets around. Since he doesn't have shots to clear the island in front of him, 16-inch armour piercing and loaded. Starts reversing. The team have just suffered their first casualty. The Seven Provinces over there has nailed the friendly Farragut with an airstrike. Starts slowly crawling backwards. All 3 turrets, all 9 guns, loaded for bear. He's looking at the broadside of that big, fat, juicy Dutch cruiser, slowly moving backwards in order to get clearance on as many guns as possible. This very likely to prove to be a paddling. The team have just lost their HMS Devonshire. The Fusion, who's contesting the cap at Alpha, is begging for assistance. The friendly Baltimore has used his radar, but didn't appear to fully understand exactly what his radar range was, and he's used it too far away to reveal the enemy Farragut, smoked up on the inner edge of the northern cap circle border, and is still continuing to force that cap. The Fusion is spotted and being engaged and forced out of that cap circle. The Seven Provinces almost managed to get away with it, but then got spotted again, which means that despite the disappointing opening salvo, Dr. Rabbit is able to score a Citadel, finish him off, and score the team's first kill. That's the good news. It's not great news because the enemy team are 1 kill ahead. The bad news is that the only reason the enemy team do not currently have 2 cap circles is because of the Fushin, who is still attempting to contest the cap at Alpha, but he has been taken out by that pesky Farragut, who's doing pretty well for a tier 6 destroyer in a tier 8 battle. And thanks to him, the enemy team are now more than 200 points ahead, and they have firm control of 2 of the 3 cap circles, so they're going to be going even further ahead thanks to the regular drip of points that they're going to be accumulating from control of those 2 cap circles. Enemy tier 7 destroyer spotted, and there's a smoke screen over there. It's not the Scania, it doesn't have a smoke. That must be the London. Must have dumped his smoke in order to disengage, if he had any sense, with 2 battleships. Oh, yeah, there he is. Okay, so he chose violence. Oh, broadside Alba. Yes, definitely. That is going to be the target of choice. Not sure why the Mackinson has chosen to charge right into the middle of that lot. And he was extremely fortunate that those presumably Farragut torpedoes did not have the range to catch him. But there are more torpedoes coming, and these are probably from the Scania, and they will have the range to catch him. The team have just lost their Trento. The enemy team are now 400 points ahead. And sure enough, the Mackinson basically chose suicide. The enemy team are now nearly 600 points ahead. The Alba has pulled a 180 and is now heading in the other direction, presumably because he's dumped torpedoes, probably at the Mackinson, and then turned around to get torpedoes away from the other side. Despite the fact that he's shown a nice big fat broadside to Dr. Rabbit's guns, he's not really being punished for it. And there are a couple of reasons for that, because despite the excellent layout and fantastic firing angles of these guns, you can have all 3 turrets firing forward with only a 27-degree angle off the bow. The armor piercing values are not great, and the accuracy kind of sucks as well. Which means that he's having real problems punishing cruisers like that Alba, like the 7 provinces earlier that were showing broadside to him. But the old rule applies: if you throw enough shit at the wall, eventually some of it's going to stick. Boom, headshot. He is being forced to retreat here though, because with only a couple of cruisers as backup after the Mackinson suicided, he's in severe danger of getting overrun here. The Tirpitz, the Farragut, the Congress are all coming around that side of the island. The Kansas and the La Galissoniere are pushing around and threatening to cut him off from the north. It's always surprising when you see cruisers that fail to take notice of the fact that their battleships are turning around and running away. The Nuremberg down to the southwest just got himself slotted. The Baltimore, I have no idea what the Baltimore is doing. And judging by what's been going on in chat, misses the dead Fushin player who was unable to contest that cap at Alpha against the enemy Farragut, thanks largely to the abysmal radar support, or lack of it, from that Baltimore, has absolutely no idea what that Baltimore is doing either. He completely failed to assist the Fushin in contesting that cap by shooting at the Farragut when it was spotted, and then after the Fushin died and he did start shooting at the Farragut, he was firing armor piercing at it, so... oh well. The only thing Dr. Rabbit can do right now is farm damage on the enemy ships that were distracted. Look at that crossfire. The Kansas is the one that actually got him. And if the Kansas hadn't gotten him, those torpedoes would have. But now that the enemy team are no longer distracted by savagely kicking that Baltimore to death, a death which has put the enemy team 500 points ahead, all eyes turn to Dr. Rabbit. Well, not all eyes. Because of his positioning, the Kansas at least can't shoot at him. He's managed to finally nail the Congress, and the La Galissoniere is showing a nice big fat broadside at a sufficiently close range that even Lenin's guns were going to Citadel in. What to do now? Well, the La Galissoniere probably dodged torpedoes, and the Farragut is almost certainly closing in too. So while there are a huge bunch of enemy ships at very close range on the other side of this island, he needs to get the island between himself and any potential incoming torpedoes. Honestly, I'm just surprised that he's not already been showered by secondaries from the Tirpitz. The team have just lost the destroyer, so the enemy team are once again 500 points ahead, but the London over there, presumably attempting to get some torpedoes off, was showing way too much skirt and becomes Dr. Rabbit's 5th victim for the Kraken Unleashed. Now, that London has almost certainly gotten torpedoes away, so he's entirely happy to beach himself over here and just wait for them. Sure enough, there they are. Here comes the Scania, who is probably not going to survive this torpedo run, but if he has torpedoes, will have already launched them, so no point in sitting still when torpedoes have been launched at you. Yep, sure enough, here they come. So moving forward allows him to avoid the torpedoes and take shots at the Kansas, but does expose his forward section to a crossfire from the Andrea Doria over there. We did not see coming, and there's the Farragut. Shots out at the Italian battleship, who has, committed a serious error of judgment. He's not quite broadside on when he ran at the island over there, but he's close enough. The Farragut smokes up. The Andrea Doria is turning the wrong way and exposing even more broadside, which means he's dead. There go the Farragut torpedoes. You'll note that the Lenin does not have hydro, and yet he has not been hit by a single one of the multitude of torpedoes that have been launched at him. Because while hydro certainly helps, you don't need it to avoid torpedoes. You just need to be capable of thinking and breathing at the same time. Now he switches his attention to the Kansas and does take out one of its gun turrets. Although he's concerned about the Tirpitz sneaking up behind him. Not too concerned about the Farragut and the smokescreen though, because he's already popped his torpedoes and they will be on cooldown, although he is taking high explosive shots from that smokescreen. His 3 surviving teammates, a cruiser, the Cherbourg, who's putting fire into the Kansas over there, and wow, the Kansas is angling against the Cherbourg and giving broadside to a Lenin. Well, okay, we'll take it. And then there's a bit of a good news, bad news situation. The Farragut gets his torpedoes reloaded slightly faster than Dr. Rabbit anticipated, and he takes one of them. But he kills the Kansas, and because he has Nikolai Kuznetsov as the captain of his Nelsky, when being reduced to 10% health once per battle, that triggers the Will to Victory talent, which pops off a free damage control and a free heal, and for the next 30 seconds reduces the accuracy of anybody shooting at him by 20%. He still can't see the Farragut thanks to a destroyer's extremely good smoke firing penalty. Shots out against the Leone, who despite smoking up at the last second becomes his 9th victim. The Farragut's torpedoes are ready to go again. He pops off a blind shot into the smokescreen. He is not able to avoid the final salvo of torpedoes and eventually goes down after killing 9 of the 12 available enemy ships. The enemy team do, of course, still have 2 of the 3 cap circles, and they're more than 200 points ahead. But they are now reduced to just 2 ships, the Farragut and the Tirpitz. And despite the fact that I did say at the beginning of this video that the outcome was not going to be decided by which team made the least number of mistakes, because there have been quite a collection of errors thus far in this battle, it is, however, at this point where the 5 survivors, how can I put this? Nobody throws. Nobody makes any stupid decisions that throw away guaranteed victories. It's not really possible for the enemy team, despite being well ahead on points, for them to win on points, because there's still nearly 7 minutes of this battle remaining. They're going to have to get at least 1 kill, and potentially also flip the cap at Charlie. However, the 3 surviving ships on Dr. Rabbit's team are fully aware of this too, which is why the Cherbourg is heading for the cap circle at Alpha, and not chasing after the Farragut. The Farragut and the Tirpitz are busy focusing their fire on the Azure Lane Littorio there, who is flipping that central cap at Bravo, but he's not doing it alone. And while they're focusing their fire on him, which I'm sure the Littorio is quite happy for them to do, because he has the most health and he's also able to angle against the Tirpitz's 15-inch guns, nobody is shooting at or resetting the Odin, who is going to flip that cap. And there's nothing they can do about the Cherbourg, who is in the process of flipping the cap at Alpha. And once he's done that, he's going to be able to sweep around to the south and put some serious pressure on the Farragut. The Farragut cannot shoot at the Odin because he's got an island between them, and if he were to pop out and spot the Odin for the Tirpitz, he would be spotted by the Littorio. So the Odin is able to get away with flipping that central cap uninterrupted. He's sending his depth charge planes out, which can't spot anything, And, well, you can see exactly where the Farragut is shooting from anyway, so, well, it's something to do, I suppose. The Cherbourg is about to finish flipping the cap at Alpha, at which point he will be free to sweep around and spot the Farragut unless he does something, who has been spotted by the Odin's spotter planes, although only momentarily. Now the Tirpitz is trying to A, stay alive, B, make it into the cover of those islands, and potentially also C, flip the cap at Charlie. But he couldn't just sail there in a straight line because that would be giving broadside to the Odin and the Littorio. So his progress is being slowed by the fact that he has to try to angle. Meanwhile, the Cherbourg has finished flipping the cap at Alpha, is now sweeping around, and exactly as predicted, did manage to momentarily spot and get some shots out at the Farragut, who has sent some torpedoes in his direction. The Odin and the Littorio are both doing exactly the right thing, sheltering from his torpedoes behind the island while continuing to subject the Tirpitz to a withering barrage, who has not managed to go undetected, but might just be able to sneak behind that island. The Farragut's been spotted again. The Odin's popping his hydro, so regardless of how quickly the Farragut can reload those torpedoes, he's extremely unlikely to be able to get a torpedo hit on anything worth hitting. The Tirpitz nearly gets away with it, goes down, and the Farragut follows in quick succession. I suppose you could argue, given the time remaining, that maybe it would have been possible for the Farragut to still pull a win out of that by just running around the caps and flipping them and trying to maintain that point lead. But that would only have been possible if the Tirpitz had survived, because once the Tirpitz died, the scores flipped and Dr. Rabbit's team were ahead, at which point the Farragut stood no chance and would have needed kills to win. Plus, even if that Tirpitz had survived, he would have flipped the cap at Charlie. And the only other two cap circles, Alpha and Bravo, had a Littorio, an Odin, and a Cherbourg in the way for the Farragut to, well, not be able to get past. So the enemy team really needed kills at that point, and unfortunately they were just so low on health. And Dr. Rabbit's surviving teammates played so well that that was never really an option. Of course, let's not forget that the only reason Dr. Rabbit's 3 surviving teammates were able to play as well as they did at the end of the match, and they did, was because Dr. Rabbit sank 9 of the 12 available enemy ships by himself. So that's probably the most important thing that we should be taking away from this. Dr. Rabbit there, not just with 9 kills, but also a high caliber, unsurprisingly. A Kraken Unleashed, a sneaky double strike, which I failed to notice happening at the time, a Confederate, and 3 devastating strikes, bringing home a haul of more than 2,500 base experience. And it's nice to see the survivors at the top of the experience earned there, and commiserations, of course, to the Farragut, a Tier 6 destroyer in a Tier 8 battle, and top of the team. He really didn't deserve to lose. Unfortunately, well, somebody has to. But I think we can probably all agree that despite the Farragut's best efforts, the better team won. Which is highly unusual in World of Warships because it's usually the least bad team that wins, which sounds like the same as the best team won, but there's an important but subtle distinction. Anyway, that's it for today. Dr. Rabbit, muchas gracias. Congratulations on 9 kills, an outstanding achievement. Commiserations to the Farragut, but well done to the winning team. And that's it for today. As always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.